the Hornady Lock and Load Concentricity Tool, right now on Pirate Firearms and Reloading. Hey folks, so today I've got something new on the bench. These have been out a few years now, but this is the Hornady Lock and Load Concentricity Tool. Now I know that's a mouthful. Essentially what we're doing with this tool is measuring and eliminating run out. So 30-second lesson is that you want the projectile to be perfectly in line with the case, therefore it will be perfectly in line and square to the rifling when you go to fire that round. If it enters the rifling at a slight angle, that can affect your accuracy, and it can also potentially damage the projectile, depending on what you're running. Some of these new thin VLD, ELD type jackets are more susceptible to things like this. So, nothing special, just a typical box from Hornady. So, I'll show you what comes in it. What you get, obviously, is not this nice cut of timber. I've just secured it here today because unfortunately, the way it is built, it is prone to tipping. It doesn't have a very wide base, but what I've done is I've got some bolts mounted in my reloading bench, so it normally just clips in there. You can obviously do, wood screws if you want to set it up on a temporary basis. It just depends how much you're going to use this. So you've got probably the most important piece of equipment here. It's a dial micrometer. So as you can see, as I push it along, the gauge turns around. Now this obviously measures in thousandths. There's two little indicators here where you can move, so you can set up your tolerance, and you can actually turn the dial as well, so you can zero it out once you have your ammunition set up. And so this is the cradle piece here. So you have a spring-loaded mandrel on this side with a nice big rubber round ball on here. The idea of this is you can remove the cases, the loaded rounds easily, and then this mandrel here on the back slides in and out and locks up with this wheel here to give you your correct length. So you can also even adjust the gauge and adjustment holder along the track too. So to get yourself started, you need to back out the adjusting screw here, just so it's enough to clear. Now, they come with 3 different mandrels for your projectile, and this will largely depend on the caliber, the type of tip you have on your projectile, and the form factor of the projectile too. So what you want to find is the correct mandrel for the projectile you're using. So in this case, for a 6.5, these are Berger VLDs, that sits in there very, very nicely. If I go to the larger one that I'd typically use for like 308, 338, something like that, it seats in a whole lot further. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this back and we're going to unscrew the rubberized ball off the end there. We're going to slide this mandrel out. This last mandrel I used was for 223 ammunition. So we'll take that guy out and we'll put in the next size up. Push it back in through there. Yep. Just like that. Spin the ball on the end and you're good to go. Now with this rear mandrel loosened off, we're going to place a case in here and we're going to push it in. Now what Hornady suggests is that you want to push it in just a little bit, so there's just a little bit of spring tension. If you put too much in there and you rotate this loaded round, it will turn the mandrel instead of turning just the projectile and case. So you want just a little bit of tension on there just to hold it nice and firmly. Just a little bit of tension, just like that. And then we're going to lock up this thumb wheel over here so it's nice and secure, and it's going to allow us to just very, very gently rotate the case. Now we need to move our measuring bracket along and set it up so we can measure the projectile itself. Now you can do this with reloads and with factory ammunition, so that's an important note to make. Depending on the dies you're using, you may get different results with different seating dies in terms of bullet run out. And then this dial micrometer goes in here like so. So there we're probably reading about 1.5 thousandths, probably a little bit closer to 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back down to the low side again, as low as it goes, closest to 0 as possible. And we're just going to crank it. And so I normally start by cranking it up to 10 thou and then bringing it back and just running it again. And we may have dropped a little bit there, but not a lot. So we'll come back to the 0 again. And this time we'll take it out to 20 thousandths. Right, so what we're doing is we're just pushing the projectile over in the case. And there is a nice little nylon bit on the end of this adjusting screw, which ultimately means that you're not going to deform the projectile. So that's still not perfect, so we'll go back to 0. We'll probably go to maybe 25 thousandths this time. Right, bring it all the way up there, like that. Back it off again. No, not a lot's changed. This is going to be a stubborn one. So we'll go out to 30. Once you've done 1 or 2, you'll actually get the feel for how much adjustment you actually need to give this. Okay, so that's a little bit less. So there's the 0. So we're probably going to go out to 35,000. Now, crimped ammunition will be substantially harder to correct the run out. Okay, now if we look at that, just over 1,000ths of run out, which I'm more than happy with. So I'm just going to back that little guy out. Now the other thing you can do to stop the micrometer dialing all the way back every time is you do have these 2 little O-rings, and if you grab those guys and you shift them along, you don't want them to interfere with the operation of actually measuring, so you want to set them a little bit further back. So when you come to release this, release the projectile out of the tool. So that one is now corrected. So we're going to put in this other one, and we're going to, this is where I find it's a little bit tricky. You're going to want to just ever so gently let that guy sit back into place there. And so once again, we're just going to do the same thing. I'm going to just slowly turn this guy around. You know what? I'm pretty happy with that one. Probably just over 1 thou. I've run out again. So I'm not even going to change anything on this projectile. And this is where it's really interesting to see consistency. Of loaded ammunition. So those 2 are good. Now I've got some ELDX rounds. So I'm just going to show you this just for reference. There's no real difference. Now the big thing with something like say an ELDX round is you don't want to use too small a mandrel like this guy here, so it's coming really close to the polymer tip. You're better off to use a slightly larger one and sit a bit further back so you're not measuring off this plastic tip. Obviously the plastic tip, if you apply force to it, you could potentially snap it off. Right, so drop that guy back in there, and we're just going to slowly turn that. See, there's very little run out in this guy too. So we'll just go back to where I think the low point is, reset that guy to 0, it's lining up for me. It mightn't exactly be lining up for the camera. You'd be lucky. Oh, there might just be about 1,000th in that one. Not enough to be concerned about. Right, and we'll check one more of the ELDX load. So both these are 140 grain projectiles, not that that makes a huge difference. I'll just set that guy to 0. Okay, no, the true 0 is probably there. I'll just dial it up. Probably about 1,500th again, so not really worried about that. So that, folks, is the lock and load concentricity tool from Hornady. It doesn't matter whether you're a reloader or whether you shoot factory ammunition. If you're shooting factory ammunition, this might be a good way to get a little bit more accuracy out of those loads by having your projectile concentric to your case. So therefore, when it enters the chamber, the projectile will be concentric with the bore and the rifling. So you get good, even engagement when you discharge the projectile, and ultimately that should translate to better accuracy downrange. So it's probably a little bit OCD, and it's not going to be for everybody. It depends how serious you want to get into reloading. If you're chasing tiny little groups, this is probably a fantastic tool. Now, it is worth noting, and I've never bought into it, or not so much bought into it, I've always just bought good quality brass, so I've never been worried about it. You can actually get the neck measuring tool for this as well, which will allow you to measure neck thickness. So if you have any questions about this guy, hit me up in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And if you found this video helpful, please share it with your friends. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments below. Catch you next time.